Hello, worms. Welcome. Here we are on the Aunty Donna Patreon. And you're a part of the club. It's a podcast. You know the deal. We're talking about. We're going to continue our conversation about Netflix, about the show Aunty Donna's Big Old House of Fun. We're going to talk about. We tried to talk about the structure in a previous episode. It ended up being 25 minutes talking about catering. And then we thought one person who knows a lot about catering is our head writer, Sam Lingham. Sam, how are you, mate?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me.
What was your favourite parts of the catering?
My favourite part of the catering was that it was there the whole time.
Yeah.
The consistency and breadth and depth that just existed. And
So
anytime...
Sam, just so you know, mate, we've covered a lot. What we haven't really covered is the Thanksgiving catering.
We touched on it. We touched on the Thanksgiving catering. So if you did want to... If you did want to talk a bit more about the Thanksgiving catering.
I can't remember the Thanksgiving catering. I can't remember it.
I remember the stuffing.
Anyway.
I remember the donuts the most.
I don't
remember the donuts at... Oh, yes, I do. Oh, my God.
Oh, yes, the donuts.
Half a donut, a turkey sausage and some fruit with a black filter coffee. Oh, my God. I felt like a real Hollywood man.
Do you know what we didn't talk about? Just quickly. Which I didn't know was a thing. Just very quickly, that I didn't know was a thing, and I was just like, this is something else. Was the peanut butter and jelly prepackaged sandwiches that came with the Crustables. That came with, so in America...
Crustables. Mark stole Crustables.
I did steal some.
I can say for a fact. I lived with Mark. We were housemates during our time in LA, and there would be times where I would see Crustables in the cupboards, and I'd go, Mark, you got to stop stealing Crustables from the snack table.
Stole quite a lot of Crustables. But Crustables are essentially, it's a frozen treat, but then you defrost it. It's the whitest of white bread, cut into like a cookie cutter, cut into like a circle, so all the crusts are off, and then fused together like a dumpling, and then on the inside is peanut butter and jam or jelly, as referred to in America. And apparently it's a big thing in America. You have them growing up. They're like La Snacks or Dunkaroos. Like everyone has childhood memories of Crustables. Anyway, they were fucked up.
Can I? So I just wanted to say.
Oh, sorry,
I wanted to draw an analogy here.
Yeah.
Between good catering and good structure.
Okay, great. That would be great.
At home.
Yeah.
Both of those things.
Okay, this is going to be good.
Will come through on the screen, but not in a tactile way. Not in a way you're really conscious of.
That's true.
It's very true. You got a happy, fed crew, cast and crew. You're going to have a really good show, but that's not a tangible thing that you can see. And very similar with structure. When you write a good structure, it's probably not something that you're fully going to notice as a first-time viewer.
That's so true. I hope our structure is good. The one issue with like banking these is that like we could be like, and this is how you write a good structure, and like this could be coming out the day after, like, I don't know, Junkie is like 1 star, bad structure.
It's true. But
and we'd be saying all these things and all the dramatic irony.
I genuinely do think that we really cracked something here with the way that we took our comedy and the way it works on YouTube and transferring it over to television, because that has been quite a slog and that has been very difficult for us, I think, to figure out as a group.
Like the omelette man out in the car park of the film studio, needing to crack eggs in order to make our omelettes and breakfast burritos. We too needed to crack the structure in order to make the breakfast burrito that is Aunty Donna's Big Old House of Fun.
Some great catering analogies happening here.
It's the only way to keep it on track, I think.
Keep it on track. So let's talk about that first pilot. The first pilot that we made for the ABC, the original idea was to have these heightened, high production sketches, right? Like things that had all the sketches were going to have really premium, a real premium quality look to them, very filmic, very cinematic. And then the idea was that and then we we're going to have a narrative, almost like a sitcom. We're going to write a sitcom about 3 characters, Mark, Zach, and Broden, who was going to be well-defined characters like you would find in any sitcom. And they would be in a comedy group called Aunty Donna, and all those were going to be super lo-fi and like handheld and almost look YouTube-y. And then
I remember the pitch was Louis meets Flight of the Conchords with sketch instead of song.
Yes. Very much so. Very much so.
But obviously, since then, obviously sketch has gone out of vogue, so we would have pitched that very differently.
Yes, yeah.
Little joke there about.
I know, I get it.
Said the Louis part.
The Louis part.
Yeah.
But that was how we I guess we thought. Would it be fair to say, guys, at the time, we thought that we needed more than just the sketches to sell a TV show?
The first idea we ever had for a TV show was us living in a house like Mighty Boosh, but Mighty Boosh vibe. That was like we did our live show in 2012, and producers came and said, "What ideas do you have?" And that was our first idea. And we heard for like 5-6 years that that was too simple and too done. And then eventually the first like full series we ever get to make is just that idea.
The layer when we were developing this show and pitching it to different executives, the funniest thing was because we sort of thought of, in some ways, like Rumpus Room was the first thing we ever did. I know Sam talked about it being like a pilot in a way, like a proof of concept for television. And it's so funny that we were like we got more and more complicated. We got more and more, we were like, here's the hook, it's about time travel. It's about a boy who changes, like a boy superstar, and we're his chaperones. It's about it's like Flight of the Conchords. It's a structure. And then someone was just like, this is good, this stuff, but maybe keep it simple. What if you just do the house part? And it's just like, that's what we've been saying for 7 years.
Because that was
our first web series.
Because basically, what happened was we had when we were trying to develop shows in America, and we were putting all these caveats on it, and it was a sketch show, but this, it was a sketch show, but this, but this on top of it, but this on top of it, and then eventually we had pitched back to us by a TV executive, and our producer was, why not just you guys living in a house? And we all looked at each other and we went, cunt, that's Rumpus Room. But Sam, did you want to talk about chaperones and just sort of what we were trying to do there?
Yeah, I'll talk. I'll just add one other point, and then we'll jump on the chats quickly.
Yeah.
I think in the early days, I was like, I don't want to make a sketch show, like a full sketch show. I don't want to watch that. Like, I think there's always that battle of being like a sitcom. You'll sit down and something with a story, you can binge it. But if it's just like sketches, you bet.
I think there was an element as well of us wanting to prove ourselves as writers a little bit, and being like, look, we can do more, give us the opportunity, and we can actually do more. And what we realized is we can't.
But also I think it's really worth noting. It's also really worth noting as well. I think what Sam's getting at as well is this notion that a big thing for us was, why make albums when you've got Spotify? Why make a sketch show when you've got YouTube? What's holding it together? Why it's better, sketches are better consumed on their own. Why make a sketch show, sketch? And we saw that, and I think even in this show has a structure, like more structure than most sketch shows. It's not League of Gentlemen level, but it's more than most sketch shows. But I think we saw that and we identified that, and then I would say we went a little too hard on the plot for the first two. Is that fair to say?
Well,
absolutely.
Chaperones was a sitcom. Like, Chaperones was not a sketch show at all, and that's why I think fundamentally for us, maybe it didn't work, was that we completely abandoned what made us special or what our strengths are, I would say. We fundamentally moved away from that, but Chaperones was necessary. We had to do that, in my opinion. We had to do that to then realize, okay, 50-50 doesn't work. Like, half narrative, half sketch for us doesn't work. 100% narrative doesn't work. What does work? Sorry, Sam, you were gonna.
No. I think the other thing with chaperones, I think we like the initial concept of like 10 minutes and it's you guys looking after a pop star. I think like when a show that came out was Atlanta by Donald Glover, and when I watched that, I was like, oh, that's what we were trying to do. We just didn't know what we were doing. He's obviously very good, and you know, for those of you who don't know, he's a manager looking after an artist, and the artist's career is kind of in the background. It's peripheral.
Right.
And there's all this, like, all the episodes are about other things. You know, they're just stupid things. Sometimes they're about the career, and I was like, that would have been what we were doing, but we had no idea how to articulate that, nor how to do that. Like, you know, it would have just been, the chances of getting anywhere near that good either are so slim, you know. So
I think there's something, isn't it, like about how do you make something that pitches well, that reads well in a pitch document to Screen Australia or pitches well in a pitch meeting with Netflix, but then when you actually get to it, is funny or is a good structure for what is actually funny, if that makes sense. Like, plots aren't funny. Plots are structures where you put the funny in. So that's a real challenge, I suppose. And Atlanta sounds like that's a great hook, but really what's good about it is the tone and what's happening inside the show.
There's just like one episode with the dude in a weird house. Like, that's the whole, like, you know.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
It's not relevant, but it's just there. It's really cool.
And again, like, another reason why Chaperones was what it was, was we were being told constantly, we don't want your YouTube stuff on TV. Like, what's happening on YouTube is for free. So what's the point of putting a premium on it and making people pay for it? So we were constantly, I would say, compromising what we were when we were at our best to make something work for TV. And
admittedly, there were people saying, like, this is good, what you're doing on YouTube is good, do that. Just give it a little something, something. And I think we thought that something, something was like big plots, characters, blah, 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 really big hooks, when really what that something, something was just like good lighting and a decent camera and like not cinematic, just like TV. Like 99 was already pretty close aesthetically to a TV show.
Broden, do you want to talk about sort of what we did come to with Big Old House of Fun and sort of how that works?
Well, it was our producer, Mike Falbo. Our producers, we worked with a production company called Pacific Electric in America. And it was kind of good to do because I think when we've developed ideas before, we've probably been too in charge. But what we kind of received from our producer in America was like, this is the funnel in which through you're going to be able to sell an idea. So he probably went for an idea that was a bit simple for us and a bit like not what we would think of. The initial idea was the show's a bit like Pee Wee Herman or like a kid's show. And every week there's a word of the day that we work towards. That was his sort of, it's like maybe there's a word of the day that you work to every week like a kid's show. And we were like, that's a good idea. We can work to that and we can say, and so the initial idea is, well, if we're playing to our strengths and that's the idea, then maybe one week it's, we do every week is a new sketch series that we're writing about a different theme. So, 1 week would be about school and 1 week would be about an office in 1999 and we'd write from there. So that was the kind of initial things. And when we were pitching to places, we pretty much just made up a little story and showed networks a bunch of sketches and how we would tell a story in between them. So we kind of used our experience of structuring live shows and our experience of writing sketches to a theme, and that was the idea. And then we were like, we'll just make a little naff little storyline that's in between all of that.
Yeah, if I could like jump on like Glenridge, the live show of Glenridge, and how that really, like how that was a key for us. I think I'd love to just talk to that, which is just that notion of like, with plots, we're like, what is plot? What is story? And I think we often went, people teach you the hero's journey, the return to normal. And it's always, that's a very like one person going on a journey or it's a people going on a journey. And I think the issue with that for sketch is there's just beats, there's story beats you have to hit. And I think that was a big issue with both our first pilots as we did the hero's journey, where like characters had to hit these like beats. So you almost had to stop the sketch to hit a beat, or you had to put that story beat in the sketch. And then with Glen Ridge, I think something that like was always, League of Gentlemen is a really interesting reference point for me, at least, where it's like they took their cues from ensemble films. That's the structure they took, was ensemble structure. And I think that you go, what's an ensemble structure? It's less hero's journey. And what ensemble structures are is like thing at end and how everyone moves towards that ending. You know, League of Gentlemen is more complicated than that, but at its very core, it's like, here's a thing at the end, and like all the different characters are moving towards this shared experience. And that's a really, really, really easy way to do sketch and plot, because you only need, 2 minutes, 1 minute at the start to set up that thing at the end, and then you need the thing at the end. And then you can literally have modular sketches, a million different sketches that you can slot in any order, which is different people reacting to or building towards that ending. And that's what we did with Glen Ridge, which was like a school dance. And then I think we were like, well, let's, on top of the word of the day, in order to keep people hooked and in order to create like a serialized thing for Netflix, in order to keep people from start of episode to end of episode, why don't we just do a really, really, really simple version of that Glen Ridge structure, which is like, plus we had to get to 22 minutes for length, and that's too long for a sketch show. Sketch can only really go for like 17 before you get bored. So we're like, let's make 4 of the minutes plot, mostly at the end, a little bit at the start, and then let's just do sketches. Except for Nighttime, which really was just like theme and stuff, and that episode for me works really, really well. And I'd love to, if we were to get more opportunities to make this, I'd love to do more of that, which is just no structure, just theme.
I like that. The thing that hit for us, I think, is when we started doing good plots. So let's do hack plots.
Yeah.
Let's do bad plots. But like, I think that thing that we sort of inadvertently stumbled into is sort of like a post-irony thing where we're doing a thing to make fun of it, but then we're also doing it earnestly simultaneously. Like, it's kind of like a lot of stuff we do, which I think confuses people, and it's hard to pitch and it's hard to explain, and we don't really consciously do it. We just do it. But that idea of doing that hack plot is great.
You put the plots the best for me, Sam. You summed them up really well when you were like, they work the best when the plot is, we say we're going to do something, that's the setup, and then at the end of the episode, it happens. Yeah. Like, that's it, and that's the plot.
Because we had a couple of other ideas for episodes, and the ones that didn't resonate with me were ones where we were like emotionally driven. Any ones where it's like, oh, Broden feels this, so they go do that, is wrong. It's all just matter of fact. Like,
well, it's very like
Olympics, they're getting ready for the Olympics, or they're
It's whenever it's a single, like whenever it's art person driving it, rather than an event that we're all driving towards. Because it's like with the Queen coming to dinner, it's like the Queen's coming, and then anyone in that house, or anyone, all you need to do is just have a Queen's coming over. And then it becomes like, what I love about that as well is it becomes, the setup of the episode is just the setup of every sketch. And you can just sort of have, every sketch has this very clean, simple setup. You could write 6, 7, 8, 10 sketches about the Queen is coming over. You can do, or someone important is coming, and all the things around that. So I think, I totally agree. I think that's such a good point, that when it was like, driven by a person or driven by a need or a character. How other people interact with that doesn't really work in a sketch way. It's better when it's just like, here's the thing. How does everyone react to it?
One of the biggest cracking opens of why this, and I think the show works. I mean, let's wait for the Junkie review. Let's see what Rotten Tomatoes think, but I think it works. But one of the big cracking opens for me was when we went fuck character. Was when we went, let's not do Broden is the straight man, always trying to get us on track, and Zach is the lovable loser, and Mark's the fucking George Costanza. Like, we'd always tried to do that with our TV stuff. We'd always gone, they need character, the audience needs character. And we basically just went, no, fuck that. It is a sketch show. At its core, it is a sketch show, and it's about sketches, and sketch shows don't have that, and they don't need that. But because we have plot, how do we work around it? And that's exactly what Broden said. It's like, as soon as you get rid of any of the emotional drive, or you get rid of, needs or wants, and you just make it very tangible, practical plots. This is happening, therefore it happens.
It's a thing.
It just kind of works.
It's all like, or any like they're underdogs or they're down on their luck or anything like. There's none of that in this show, which I really like.
Yeah,
which might be jarring for people as well. I will say, but like, this is the idea. Like, we made a real point of like the instinct would have been to do Workaholics or to do Young Ones or to do one of those where it's like the house is disgusting.
Oh yeah, I love that.
And they don't have jobs. In there, for some reason, in this show, the house is fine. There's no worry. There's no worries about money. Like, I really like that. There's just no
zero stakes.
They have a Jeep.
Stakes. Yeah,
they
have
just
a nice Jeep.
Like, there's no. I really like that. I really like that.
There's no. How do they pay their rent? There's no why do they live together? There's no rhyme or reason to any of it. It just is. I found that very freeing. Once we abandoned everything, essentially once we abandoned everything you need to make a sitcom, but we put a sitcom element, which was a story in there, that's where it all started to like, oh, this show could go for like 20 seasons with that, because it's just so simple.
I remember like the network everyone being like, where's it set? And we're just being like, just a city somewhere. Like, it did end up coming through it's pretty LA just because of all the people and the place and stuff. But we were just like, the city somewhere. And I was like, I don't want to answer that question. Because as soon as you go, well, where are they? You go, oh, they're in fucking, I don't know, they're in Denver. And you go, okay, why are they in Denver? And where are they from before that? And what are their jobs? And how'd they get there? And I'm like, I don't care. Like, as soon as you start answering one question, there's this cavalcade of things that start coming up.
Exactly. And again, it comes to that thing for me. It was like, I feel like every time we were able to circumnavigate those conversations, it was like, why? It's because, well, this is a fucking sketch show. It's not a sitcom. It's not a narrative. It is a sketch show. It just has an element of something else, a very small, very easily digestible element. And it is interesting. I don't know if that's going to be jarring for people.
It's going to be really, I'm really curious to see if people like. That's the biggest question, because the line between like, and I think the mistake some of our pilots made is like, if you do too much plot but not enough plot, it's bad plot. But if you're very clear on the fact that, all right, this plot is so minimal, you have to strip it back. It's like you almost can't add. There's a point where if you add any more, it's like Uncanny Valley. There's like a graph of like, if you add a teeny bit more plot, it then is like bad plot. It's like, this is a sitcom with not enough plot. But if you have a little enough plot, people hopefully will go, oh, this is just a cooked half hour. So hopefully people can read it for what it is. Like, that's going to be, that's what I'm really intrigued about. And you the listener, now.
Our producer in LA had this really interesting point with sketch shows. He's like, you spend all the time pitching the 5% of the show that holds it together. Like,
yes,
like 95% of the show is just good sketches, but you can't pitch that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Have to go, here's all the stuff between it. That's what your actual selling point is.
Unless you're fucking Tim Robinson and you just do a fucking sketch show and it's sick.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. That was a good topic. Did you have any final thoughts, Sam? Anything you wanted to contribute, say, to the dear worms in the Aunty Donna Club?
No, thank you for being worms. Are we calling them all worms now, are we?
Yes. Yeah, we're calling them worms.
I
call them worms.
On that.
I think
call
we
them
did.
worms.
I remember the podcast. It's because Slipknot call their fans maggots.
I better.
Yeah, I was like, people are moving towards maggots. I'll go maggots, and then bro, you explained to me that There's a rock and roll group that already does that. And I was like,
Heavy
I don't
metal.
know.
It's
I know
heavy
about the
metal.
little monsters. I don't know about these maggots, this rock and roll maggots. So
It's because when they were playing to big crowds and they would see the crowd move and jump and mosh, they looked like maggots on a corpse.
and so whereas worms is because we are the kings.
Yes,
We are the kings
and we could
without
crush
blue
any
tick.
of you. We could crush any of you very simply. You live in my garden in my compost bin.
We are the kings.
I do have a fan that lives in my compost bin, so it's that is interesting.
I sent an email to Dom the other day who helps with our social media, and I sent her an email about something that was like the podcast. She was like, "Oh, good job on the Aunty Donna Club podcast." And I said something just passingly like, "It's good to give the worms their grub." And it was just like a little joke, but I was like, reading it as a private exchange between two people, it seems gross and disgusting. It doesn't seem like... So I was like, I'm going to stop doing that. I will only refer to the worms as worms, you know, when it's a reciprocal kind of joke. It really looked awful. It was just an email. Like, I was like, imagine an email leak where like that happens. But that's it. Yes, we call them worms. Sam.
We call them worms. Well, look,
But Broden doesn't, maybe. Broden's still deciding what he calls them.
thank you
sort of
so
sits in
much. Oh, sorry,
What's
go.
that, Sam?
No, it does sit in juxtaposition towards the Aunty Donna Club. You know, come join our you know.
Yeah, and come and be a fucking worm. Makes sense
Okay.
to me.
Maybe like they
I'm just
can.
dumb.
The problem is people on Twitter. We call our followers on Twitter worms as well. So maybe we could call them like the king worms,
Or
The
maggots?
kings of the worms, or lord worms, or maggots.
I think maggots could be good. Sam, thanks so much for joining us on the Aunty Donna Patreon podcast, the short 15-minute podcast.
Can you stick around?
You want to stick around?
Stick
Sam?
around. Do you want to have a beer? We're just going to go out for a beer now.
Yeah,
We're
that'd
over
be wonderful.
Zoom, mate. This was recorded during one of the longest lockdowns in world history. Just a little joke there.
It's a little joke.
Little joke there.
But with the harshest restrictions anywhere else in the world.
little joke there.
Little joke. They're actually not the harshest restrictions.
Dictator Dan. Little joke there.
Little
I
joke
don't
there.
think he's a dictator.
No, I
He's
think
a
he's done quite a good job.
democratically elected leader. And, you know, you can have issues with, you elect him out if you have issues with his...
And maybe there was a bit of a,
vote for the
kind
Reason
of
Party if you got issues. I just don't think he's a
oversight with
dictator.
the hotel stuff. But
So
I think
thanks so
overall he's done a good
much for joining us, Sam.
job. Bye.
What Dan
Right.
needs to do.
Fade out,
is-
Tom. Fade out on this.
Fade out, Tom. Tell him fade out, man.
Fade out on this. Yeah, please go on, Broden.
No, let's just
What
stop
Dan-
it. No, what, Broden, tell me. I'm so sorry. Go.